Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a build guide for the Mounted Archer. Now, if you're new to the channel, this is a beginner's build guide. It's designed for a beginner within Mortal Online 2. I have two different types of build guides that I'm coming out with. I've got beginner build guides and I have veteran build guides. Beginner build guides are designed to be very noob friendly, both from a cost perspective and a time investment perspective. You can get this build online within a day or two and be out there kicking butt with your buddies and really contribute to most fights. This build, if you're new to Mortal Online, is more or less white bread. This is the most boring generic build I could possibly think of, but the reason it's the most boring generic build I can think of is because it's just really good at everything. That means that it's overplayed a lot. So I'm going to go through this build guide. I'm going to talk about the stats, why I picked what I picked, the professions, my recommendations for gear and basic things like that. And then I'm going to do a tier list at the end. But first, let me shout out my website, mo2builds.com. So if you ever have questions, problems, you can go to mo2builds.com. If you're shopping for a new guild, there's a guild. mo2builds.com/guilds has a whole bunch of different guilds there that you can select from, and you can find a home, which is really, really important in this game. If you're new here, finding a guild would highly recommend. So now that I've shouted that out, I'm going to go ahead and relax. I'm going to start talking about the build, what it is, how it works, the pros, the cons, and then I'm going to get into the tier list and kind of break down every single little detail. So this is a human. This is a full Tindremic human, which is like the white guys of the universe. If you're new to ML2, the race is, the humans are actually broken down into several different groups. You can think of them as tribes, right? But the Tindremic guys are in the northwest part of the map. This is age 30 to maximize your strength. It's max height, so when you build your character, it's going to be 204, and then there's a clade that you unlock somewhere in here that boosts your height a little bit more. Stout is the weight that you want. When you're building your character, if you're brand new, when you're going into Haven, the things you care about are your age, your height, and your weight, because those things are difficult to change later. You also need to, pick the right race and the right like tribe or whatever. But your stats come as you play. So if you're hitting things, you unlock more points in strength, and you have a certain number of stats to play with. This character, a full Tindremic character, has the most stats of any race in the game. So it is very, very popular right now. It is kind of like the meta across the board. Them and Sardukans and a few other little things. But this character has really high strength. It has decent dexterity. Your movement speed, your combat movement speed's 422, which is a smidge higher than the other foot fighters that are non-Alvaran, which is nice, so you're not slow on foot. You have a decent amount of health, coming in at 190. A full foot fighter that's focused on health might be at like 210, so you're right in the ballpark there. And your intelligence is 95, which is as much as a dex mage for an Alvaran or something like that. So this character not only is a decent foot fighter, but it is a mage as well. It has casting, it has mounted archery, it has mounted magery, it has the free taming points, the 31 taming points to be able to tame your horse. Like, there is so much that you can fit into this build, it's kind of nuts. So if we're going through talking about a few key things right here, archery, specifically mounted archery, got nerfed about a year ago. They made it so that you had to put more points into it, like aiming techniques, to be a proficient mounted archer. Because they added a ton of sway and a whole bunch of different bounce and stuff like that. So to mitigate that impact on your character while riding a horse, you need aiming technique, you need controlled riding, you need controlled aiming, you need mounted archery, you need all those things up. But only certain ones affect damage and other ones affect sway. Like mounted archery itself affects how much damage you do on horseback. If you're mounted and you have a bow in your hand and you have 0 points in mounted archery, so say you have none of this, you're going to hit for half damage. So if you have 0 mounted skills, you're hitting for half damage on horseback, just flat out. So if you have 50 points, you're hitting for 75%. If you have 100 points, you're hitting for 100%, if that makes sense. It's not doubling your damage. It just makes sure that you hit for your full amount while on horseback. Okay, so ecumenical skills are at 62. That unlocks a whole bunch of different spells. Everything short of basically Earthquake you can do from an ecumenical perspective. It has 44 heavy armor weight, which means that your free armor weight is 19 1, 2. And if you go medium armor, you go Curite Panzer Carapace Iron Fur, which is pretty damn cheap now since the game's been rolling for a while. You get those items. It costs 1,200 Panzer Carapace and 404 Iron Fur per set, and the set weighs like 19.00. It is brain dead easy to just put that set on and be good to go, and it provides pretty damn good protection. If you decided you didn't want to have a bunch of majory skills here, you wanted to drop the mental training or the mental offense, or maybe lower your ecumenical down to 50 to just keep magic reflect, you could also take the intelligence and put it into psyche. That's going to make you a psi fighter, is what a lot of people call it, where you have really good defense just all around. It's not the best in any category, but it is really good in most categories, so which is kind of like the I don't know, the gimmick of this build. It's not the best at anything, it's just really good at everything. So you could potentially be a psi warrior on this build. You could potentially just turn yourself into a mage on this build. Like if you wanted to fat yourself out and lower your weight, it's expensive to do that down the road from a character changing perspective, but you can respec your clades, you can change your age, you can change your height, you can change your weight now with alchemy. So if you decide like, I really like this game, but I don't want to re-roll and I don't want to level up again, but I want to be a mage, this character can do that very easily, and you can still be a very effective mage by just changing those stats around. So this character is very, very good just all around. You're going to get value in almost every single fight that you take. When you're talking about professions, again, you can fit so much into the build because you have high intelligence, plus you're a human. If you decided you didn't want the war cry because you're a human and you're a mounted archer and you're never on foot because you can't war cry on foot, you could go down the profession tree and get even more profession points. But you need animal material. I like being able to craft my own bows. You might not need the asymmetrical bow. Generally, a dense crepite short bow is going to be kind of the meta bow while you're riding on horseback. But if you want to make a few extra coins on the auction house, you could do some asymmetrical bows, you can do some long bows. All of that stuff it doesn't sell super well because crepite and dense crepite are kind of the only materials you need for bows right now. They really need to rework how bows actually work. And if you're new to the game, you might not realize that like being a dedicated archer is not really a thing. This build that you're looking at right now is kind of the only way to really be effective with a bow. You're not going to be able to take down a foot fighter in an open field before he can connect with you, even if you land all your shots with 0 downtime and play it absolutely perfect. Like that's not really a thing that this game offers right now, which is sad, right? One of the core archetypes of any MMO is Ranger or Archer, and that will come soon when they do the weapon skills. When they add weapon skills to the game, they're going to do bow as well. So maybe archers will be viable at that point. Maybe you'll be able to be a ground or a foot archer at that point, but currently you really can't. Either way, it needs a rework. They need to be able to make bows out of wood and stuff like that, but really it's all just crepite, and you can go farm all of that by farming spiders. So the price on bows is really cheap right now. But if you want to prepare for the future, maybe you are watching this in the future and you just want to be able to craft all the different types of bows, because now asymmetrical bows are meta. If you set this all up and read those books over time, because your character reads super fast because you're a human, you'll be set up. You can make horse armor with this character, so what you want to do is you want to run flakestone with silk for your horse armor. That's kind of the meta mounted archer armor. If you go something heavy like steel or tongue steel on your horse armor, A, it's going to be really expensive, and B, it's going to slow you down to a crawl. Will it make you durable? Yeah, but you want to run a max level horse, and you want to run flakestone silk. That's going to keep you very fast. It puts you in this really nice sweet spot where you're faster than the really heavy guys, so you can chase down the guys with steel horse armor, and you can get away from the really heavy guys as well. And then if you're fighting another mounted archer and they're running a naked horse because they want to be the ultimate like interceptor, you win those battles because your horse can take a couple more arrows before it goes down, as long as you're somewhat evenly matched. if that makes sense. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You won't be able to escape from the naked guys, but if they catch you, you'll be able to knock them out, and then you'll be able to get away from whoever's left. So Flakestone Silk, it's not on this page anywhere. Just got to remember Flakestone Silk horse armor is kind of what you want. And we have the petrology, we have the textile lore, so we can make it ourselves. Flakestone and Silk, both super cheap. Like this build, I'm telling you, bows are cheap. The Panzer Carapace and Iron Fur is not like, it's not like free cheap, but it's still really cheap. And then the horse armor, Flakestone and Silk, really cheap. Like this whole build is just so easy to get online, get going. And then you want a sword, and you can buy a steel sword, a one-handed or a two-handed sword for 6 gold or something at this point. It's basically free. This whole kit is going to cost you like 25 gold to step out the gate, and that's like nothing. And that's pretty much this is battle ready gear. I mean, Panzer Carapace is not something to sneeze at. It's not steel, but it's like one step below steel. So you can run a pretty effective kit for next to nothing on this, which is really, really nice if you're learning the game and you're learning how to play the game. So when you're building this character for Clades, the only thing that I'd recommend beelining for when you're in Haven is Striker. So pick up the reading book so you read faster first, and then beeline for Striker. That's just going to make your clearing of mobs so much faster. But let's get into the tier list. Let's talk. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Trinket Prio. Trinket Prio for this character is super simple, super basic. Once you get into the real high-end stuff, it gets expensive, but all you want is free armor weight so that your max armor weight goes up and you can wear better and heavier armor. Maybe swap out one of these items for a heavier piece of steel chest armor or something like that. If you get a nice neck piece that has free armor weight, just grab any other free stats that you want on the neck. The primary action points don't really matter. You have so much like free points in this build. You can fit so much into it. You're not really strapped for anything. Maybe if you can pick up extra marksmanship points, aiming technique, extra heavy armor training. Generally, when you're looking for stats on your neck, you don't want the things that hurt you if they get uncharged. So if you're in the middle of intense battle out in the world and your trinkets lose charge, it doesn't gimp your build. Like you wouldn't want to ever have armor training on your build because, I don't know where it is, right here, armor training. Because if you die and it becomes uncharged, you lose the 100 points, which means you also lose the heavy armor training. So your armor weight goes from like 19 to like 8, right? So that destroys your build. So just be careful when you're buying next to try and avoid that. If you get a really good deal on a free armor weight trinket and it has like armor weight on it, you can always leave the armor weight over leveled and sacrifice those like free points from the neck. When you're looking for rings, you want 3 raw strength and raw con. That's gonna get you to the next break-even point. So you'll get 110 strength, which will unlock a bunch of free primary points, and then con does the same thing. Or you can go for 5 raw dex, which is going to make you just faster on the battlefield, kind of put you a cut above all the other people running this build, and also get you to the break point for dex, which is also really, really nice, right? So let's go into the tier list. So all right, tier list. All right, so I like to leave PvP kind of to last unless I know for sure it's like S tier. So PvE, oh man, this is a mounted archer, man. This is kind of the pinnacle of PvE. If you're new to the game and you're trying to learn what's what, like PvE, this is so good. You can basically solo most of the mobs out in the world with ease. It's going to give you a ton of Clade. It's going to give you a ton of, or honor or glory or whatever it's called now, basically experience. And then it's also going to give you a ton of resources. If you're in a dungeon, you're okay. You have very medium damage. It's not like bad damage, but you're really middle of the road. But you can heal, you can support your team, you can cast, you can cleanse, you can do all the other things that a really basic mage can do. Plus, once you get out to the open world, you're just a horse shredding machine. Dedicated mounted archers really make a big impact in team play for open world fights, and we'll talk about that here in a sec. But for PvE, like, you can almost solo everything except for like certain trolls. You can solo certain trolls, but you can't do all of them. They are adding more mobs that have ranged attacks to kind of counter how easy this was. So it is getting worse over time, but it is still like there's nothing better than it. If you're gonna go like dedicate PvE, especially out in the open world, it's like unbeatable at this point. Solo, if this is your only character and you're trying to figure out how to play the game, this is up there. I would say this isn't as good as a dedicated dex foot fighter or somebody who's playing a foot fighter like an Alvaran mounted archer. They do exist. It's a little bit harder to fit it all into the build, but they do exist, and that character has options. When you get dismounted, you can leave combat. You can run away better than this character. This character is a smidgen faster than the non-Alvaran foot fighters, but if you're getting chased by an Alvaran foot fighter on this guy, you ain't getting away. You know, you're not the fastest in the game, not even close. So if you get dismounted, you're pretty committed to a fight. But I will say that it is really hard to dismount a good mounted archer. They're going to generally knock your horse out from under you first, right? And once you get proficient at this, you know, I've played with, you know, one of my friends from back in the day, his name is Pump, and I always think about him. He had 2 crazy pierce rings. We were right outside of Legion Keep by Sausage Lake, and it was me on horseback. I dismounted to try and take the fight to the ground. He was on horseback. We were fighting 2v8, and before his horse went down, he killed all 8 of the enemy horses. He was one of the most cracked mounted archers I'd ever seen. He killed 8 horses before his horse went down, right? We killed like 2 or 3 guys before we got knocked out, and it was a 2v8, which is absolute insanity, right? So you can get very proficient at this and be very devastating. 1v1 versus dueling. So dueling, when we're talking about dueling, we're talking about honorable duels, like in town, where you have like kind of unspoken rules that everybody kind of agrees on, like don't use magic and don't use a bow and don't use your mount and like all this stuff. So your character has a lot of dead stats when it comes to that. You can't use your magic, you can't use your mount, you can't use all that stuff. But you're a decent foot fighter, you can wear medium armor. It's not like the worst thing ever. You can definitely go into town and duel naked against other people and still hit basically as hard as them, have a decent, like almost as much health as them, and learn how to duel without feeling like you're just at a huge handicap during all of your duels, right? So it's still a really good class to go learn on. 1vx. I'd say this is like slightly above average, because if the fight is out in the open world and you get jumped by 2 guys, you can dictate the pace of combat by winning the first horse kill. If you kill the first enemy horse in that fight, you're going to be able to string that fight out, drag the second opponent even farther away, then dismount him, and then choose whether or not you want to engage on that fight. If you lose your horse at that point, you still have a pretty good chance because you get instantly thrown to the ground with your bow out. You can probably knock out his horse and dismount him, and now you're in a ground fight, and you can put in or try to put in as much damage as you want, either with your bow or with your magic before you connect, then go into melee with him, and hopefully put in some work before the second guy or whoever the other people are get to you, and then maybe just collateral that into the next target. Or maybe you kill him so fast you have breathing room and you can heal yourself. Being a mage and being able to heal yourself just gives you so much utility, because the healing throughput from lesser heal is so much higher than a bandage. It's absolutely nuts, right? 1v1. 1v1 is if you're fighting to the death against a single opponent, and it could be any build in the game. So I'm kind of thinking across all of the builds in the game, like what you could come up with, what's the most common thing that you're going to bump into, and how does this stack up against it. This is honestly really good, right? I'd say it's up there at B tier. If you're in the open world, it's even better. If you're in the open world, I'd say it's A tier, right? Because it just has a lot of power when it's mounted. Honestly, being able to kill a horse really, really goes a long way in this game. Okay. Offense. For offense, I'd say it's middle of the road, right? Until they add weapon skills or abilities, The bow doesn't really hit that hard, right? If you get some pierce rings, the bow starts to ramp up quite a bit, but your damage throughput, you're not the hardest hitting melee, not even close really. I mean, you're not bad, but you're not really that close. There's a bunch of other classes that have better melee damage than you. There's other classes that can use bigger and better bows than you. So like I talked about, you're really not the best at anything. So you're really middle of the road. Like, there's a lot of builds in this game that are just good. So being better than them and justifying something above average score is kind of hard. But your offense is okay. Again, same thing with this one. Your defense is okay. You could put even more points into it and make yourself more tanky. The ability to heal yourself is really nice, but your damage mitigation is not that great. You're able to peel for yourself really, really well. You're able to get out of fights really, really well. So your defense is pretty good. I would say actually it's a little bit higher because you can not only mounted archer, but also you have full points at mounted magery. So this is kind of like an arcane archer. This is a pseudo arcane archer. It's pretty flexible on horseback to be able to heal your horse. So your defense is pretty good. Like if you were going to transport stuff of high value, I would want a couple mounted archers in the group, and I would want them carrying. Actually, they wouldn't be carrying the loot. Somebody on a naked desert or a naked jungle would be carrying the loot, and these guys would be the guys peeling them off. So you'd be able to peel for anybody that jumps on your loot carrier. Team fights. It's pretty damn good, man. This is a pretty damn good build for team fights. It's not often that you see solo play and team fights this highly rated, but you can get value from your kit in any fight. Killing horses is always valuable. Being able to heal is always valuable. Having decent foot fighting skills and being able to hold the line is valuable. Realize that on the front line, you're going to get flopped if you try to stay in a big fight against a bunch of dedicated foot fighters. But yeah, like really good. Cost investment. Getting this build online and keeping it at optimum efficiency. Cheaper would be like S tier. Really expensive is F tier. This is S tier. This is like the most budget friendly meta build you could run. It's just so easy to just have a good kit with this and step out the gate. You could very easily go farm for a day or two and get enough for like 10 sets. Just keep them in your bank. You're self-sufficient in your crafting, so you can make all your own shit once you get the books read. Like, it is very easy to just keep this guy online. Utility, very high up there. I take that back. It's above average because you can heal, because you got mounted archery, because you got mounted magery, because you got medium armor, and you can do weapon damage. Now, you don't have defensive stance, you don't have aggressive stance, you don't have that stuff that dedicated foot fighters have. The main thing that I knocked it down a peg for was you're not a full mage. You don't have elementalism, you have no AoE, you have no necro, you have no utility from necro, you don't have any of that stuff that would really bump the utility up. But it's above average because you're a pretty good foot fighter and you're a mage that has ecumenical, which is extremely useful for a lot of different reasons, right? Skill cap. This is S tier. Now, when we're talking about skill cap, we're talking about like how hard it is to be effective with this. This is probably, S would be like the easiest. It's easiest to pick up and get good with. F is like super hard to pick up and get good with. This is S tier. This is one of the easiest builds to just pick up and learn to play. It's very straightforward. You're going to still lose to other people that have been doing it longer than you, but I mean, what build wouldn't be like that? So this is just like so easy to get online and learn the game with and be well-rounded. Humans sucked for a very long time. That is no longer the case. Humans are super meta. They're a little broken. This is a really good example. Like, this is a noob-friendly class that is like really good at all the shit. You can see there's nothing at the bottom of the tier list yet. I don't even think there's going to be anything down there. Uptime. Okay, I lied. Uptime is down there. So when I'm talking uptime, what I'm talking about is I'm talking about dead stats for your build. So if we look at the build, and we look here and we say, okay, when I've got my sword out and I'm fighting, my archery is a dead stat, my controlled aiming is a dead stat, controlled riding, my ecumenical, my heavy armor training, no, heavy armor training is good, marksmanship, mental offense, mental training, mounted magery, all of that stuff is a dead stat when I've got my sword out and I'm foot fighting. When I'm casting spells, my archery is a dead stat. When I'm using my bow, my archery and everything, you understand my point is this character is almost like in thirds. It's a good mage, it's a good foot fighter, it's a good archer. All of that stuff takes up like a third of the build. So no matter what you're doing, 2/3 of your build is essentially dead stat. So this is the best build for learning the game and figuring out what aspect of the game you enjoy, and then reroll. Well, in 2 patches, they're going to allow you to have a second character on the account. So stick it out for 2 patches, and then make your dedicated whatever. Make your dedicated foot fighter. Make your dedicated mage. Whatever you enjoy in the game, learn it with this character. Then go into that, and you're going to save up some money. You're going to learn the game. You're going to be just like ready to rock and roll for your second character. This is the best like starting character. Crafting. It's middle of the road. Like, I'd say it's human, so it's a little bit above. Right, we'll put it up here. We'll just make some room in the fucking B tier category. Because you're human, you can get extra stats, extra points. It's nice because you can make everything that you need aside from your melee weapon, but when you hit the broker up, every single broker in the game has steel swords. It's the most popular common weapon in the game. It's not going to be hard to find them. Your boys in whatever guild you're in definitely have them, and you definitely have crafters that can make them, but everything else in your build you could make. So the hardest thing to find is the Flakestone Silk Horse Armor, because I don't know if it's meta now, but it was definitely not meta back in the day. But being able to make that is like kind of the most weird thing, because you need petrology plus heavy armor pet training. Like, so anyways, you get my point. You can make everything you need except for your sword. For fun, this is middle of the road for me. I'm not a big mounted archer guy. I don't really enjoy using the bow, even a little bit. I have 5 accounts. I don't really have anybody that uses the bow anymore. But when you're brand new, this does feel fun. This is something that you can get a lot of value from, even if you're brand new and you don't have very much skill or knowledge or game sense yet. So it's not unfun, but to me, it's not fun anymore. So I'm just going to leave it in the middle of the road. You can make up your own mind about that. PvP, again, middle of the road, maybe even a step down. Again, 2/3 of your build is offline during whatever type of combat you're engaging in. Your utility is super high. Your team fighting capability is really nice because you can be flexible. And when you're in a team fight, you don't need to be the best at something generally to get value. Flexibility is a lot more important. So I would take this down a rung. It's probably middle of the road. I'll put it middle of the road. People will get mad if I put it down there, but it's middle of the road, right? It's not going to excel at anything. Again, jack of all trades. Overall, I'd say this is an A tier build. This, for a beginning character, I can't really imagine anything better other than maybe a Dex foot fighter, maybe an Ogmir. If you know that you're never going to want to do magic, an Ogmir might be the way to go. But generally, this is like the most flexible class you can play. It's going to teach you the most about the game, the mechanics of the game, and how to play every build, every popular build, really. So you know how to fight against them too. You know the pros and the cons. It's just going to make you a well-rounded player. And then I would suggest re-rolling into whatever you really enjoy the most, if that makes sense. This is a fantastic character to play. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, guys. If this video was of value to you, please super chat or leave a super comment or whatever. It is appreciated. It helps keep the wife aggro low. But if not, you don't have to. It's not a problem. I just appreciate that you're here and that you spend some time with me. I hope that you enjoy your time in Mortal. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Holy shit.